Ta-da! All right, so thank you all for taking the time to be here this afternoon. We had a phase change, so we just wanted to talk about some of the changes that kind of come along with it. I was at the Board of Health meeting this past evening, and so we talked about the phase changes in a little bit more depth. So the reality is that with all of our programs that we're operating right now, those we're going to stay in the phase 2 operations just because it's been really successful and it's been working. And at this point, we have the possibility of expanding group sizes, but we don't see the need to have to do that. So at this point in time, like I said, we're going to stay where we are in the phase 2 with all of our programs. It's been pretty successful. Beach, again, there's not any big new updates. So I don't see us changing a whole lot as far as the management and the operations are going down there. So really the big thing comes down to just the use of athletic fields and the basketball courts. So one of the things that we talked about last night, and I'm going to share the screen again so we can take a look at the Executive Order 43. So this specifically is in response from the state on their guidelines for the reopening of facilities that deal with youth and adult amateur sports. So this is the phase 3, step 1 implementation. So I think a lot of us, just to kind of go back a little bit, Chuck, to let you know a little bit of the history of our involvement. So our department is part of the Massachusetts Parks and Recreation Association, which has been heavily involved in the outdoor task force and working on policy when it comes to the beach and programs and things like that. So we've kind of, have a little bit heads up on information before it comes out in these executive orders. Which has been really great because it's been able, especially in this group, to be able to help us really assess where we're going with things. So I think we were under the impression with the phases that a lot of the sports were going to be able for gameplay, specifically when we got into phase 3. And so when we go through this executive order, some are and some aren't. They actually broke it up into different groups. So I'm going to go down further. And all of this information I can send out to you guys if you want to have it and review. So the big piece is these categories that they came up with. So sports and activities, they've divided them up into low risk, moderate risk, and high risk. And depending on how they were identified into their categories, allows them to participate in certain levels of play. So you can see this low risk, they're allowed to participate in level 1, 2, 3, and 4, moderate 1, 2, and 3, and high only level 1 at this time. So I'll scroll down a little bit more and we can talk about what these levels actually mean and what groups are split into these areas. So low risk sports and recreation activities they're characterized by things that can be done with social distancing or activities that can be done individually. So their examples that they give are going to a batting cage, tennis, pickleball, swimming, disc golf, surfing, individual sailing, yoga, and non-contact exercise classes. In moderate risk, we have sports that involve intermittent contact, but they're using protective equipment or mitigating measures in place that can reduce the likelihood of the respiratory particle transmission. So examples of that are baseball, softball, sailing, track and field, cross country, running teams, swim teams, volleyball, dance, fencing, field hockey, and the MRPA, we've had a discussion about this no contact lacrosse. So men's and boys is definitely contact. Girls is considered no contact because they're not doing the checking like the boys are. But the reality is that, you know, if you're looking at the play, there is a lot of the contact that does take place, even though they're not doing a portion of the contact lacrosse like checking. So as far as MRPA was concerned, there was a lot of discussion on whether it was girls and women's was to be considered contact or not. And as a professional decision, I think a lot of the departments were under the impression that they felt that the girls should be considered contact, not non-contact. So high-risk sports. So this is stuff where it's close proximity, and that there's going to be a lack of any protective barriers, and high probability that respiratory particles can be transmitted between participants. So examples of this, they had football, wrestling, soccer, rugby, basketball, lacrosse, ice hockey, competitive cheer, martial arts, crew and sailing, that's more than 3 people on a boat, and ultimate frisbee. And, you know, we have a whole lot of sports in this area that, you know, we run in this town. So, you know, as we move forward, so we talked about what the different levels were. So at low risk, they're able to do these level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Sorry, I don't know why I said 5, 4. So level 1 is that we're doing socially distanced group activities, so no contact workouts, aerobic conditioning, or individual skills and drills. Level 2 is competitive practices, so you can do intra-team games or skills and drills in scrimmages, but specifically with the same team, like you'd have to split your team up. Level 3 would be competitions, so inter-team games, matches, and races. And then level 4 is the tournaments that would be held outdoors only. So, you know, as we get through this, the decision that was made by the Park Commission last week, was it the week prior? Time is just blending together. So they wanted to open the athletic fields for youth sports with an agreement that the youth sports organizations would come to us with a management plan. So how they would teach and implement the COVID-19 guidelines to their coaches that would be working with the individual groups. So once that was on file and approved, then we would give them a permit to be able to go out and use the fields. So, and that was for Littleton Youth Baseball and Softball, Littleton Youth Lacrosse, Littleton Hoops, Littleton Soccer, and I think, was there anybody else? I'm not sure. So we sent that email out to all of those organizations here in Littleton, and you know, I think baseball has responded back saying that they're not going to move forward with a summer ball, but they are thinking about fall ball, so I'll work with them on that. I have not heard back from the other organizations, so I'm not sure what their game plan is. I know the season for lacrosse is kind of over at this point in time, so I'm not sure if they want to do skills and drills clinics or something, but we'll work with them if they want that. So, you know, then this comes to essentially our basketball courts that we have at 300 King. So, you know, we had a discussion last night, and Jim, I don't know if you want to talk about this a little bit more, because you stayed on the call a little bit longer than I did, just about the Board of Health recommendations for the courts. You there, Jim?
So, you know, the board kind of agreed with your assessment of that guidance from DPH. And again, they felt because things couldn't be managed, the kids would, you know, it'd be a series of pickup games, and they certainly wouldn't recommend opening them.
Okay. I don't, was there any other additional talk about anything?
No, I mean, that was the gist of it.
Okay. Kevin, did you have any more input from Board of Health?
No, I think Jim nailed it. They just would recommend the reopening at this time.
Okay. So those are kind of the updates where we are right now with phase 3. The reality, the conversations that we've been having, again, as the Massachusetts Parks and Rec Association, we don't have a crystal ball, so we can't see what level 3 step 2 is going to be. Will it be relaxed, and will we actually be able to, start opening and relaxing a little bit? We're just not sure. So the Park Commission will, have a conversation with the public and, make a decision on Tuesday night what they want to do moving forward as far as the basketball courts are concerned. I know there's a large group of people in town that would really like to see it opened.
Alicia, can I jump in on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Chuck.
Because I'm getting a lot of phone calls to that end. And
Okay.
I wish I'd had time to get on the Board of Health call last night. And I appreciate, everybody that's trying to get to some sort of new normal. But in the research that I've done, as locally as Westford, and I can share documents from Westford, and then having spoken with a member of their Board of Selectmen, or Select Board, that get used to that. A lot of communities, most communities in the Commonwealth, although these are guidelines, are opening these types of facilities, basketball courts especially. Actually, not especially, because there's a lot of ball fields. I have friends in Rehoboth. I reached out to them, and their baseball program is up and running. So I'm speaking for Westford. Westford's Board of Selectmen made a determination that as long as proper signage was up, and basically you put the CYA documentation up there saying anybody that shows up and plays on these courts is subject to all these guidelines, or they can be removed from the property, that kind of thing. I don't want to step on any toes, but it's on our agenda for the Select Board on Monday, and I plan on having that conversation with the Select Board relative to us taking some action. Whether or not that's implemented with collaboration from the PRCE Commission or with the Board of Health is, the Board of Health recommended not opening. So I think the Select Board will in all likelihood do the same thing, make a recommendation. Similarly, when we closed, for instance, Castle Latrice and 300 King, we made the statement that although it's technically beyond our purview, we kind of took that action thinking that it was a necessary step, and rather than waiting until other boards and commissions could meet, we figured we'd kind of take the bullet if there was any fallout or backlash on that. So just as a heads up, it is something that's on our agenda. It is something that I'm gathering data to try to determine how other communities are doing it and doing it successfully. And I guess, Kevin, if you could kind of jump in and see if you can give me any justification. Was it a unanimous vote last night by the Board of Health? Is it? I mean, you guys are our elected officials. You are our Board of Health, and kind of if you have any additional insight as to the ultimate reason as to why the recommendation was made not to.
Yeah, I believe it was just following the guidance and just the level of concern about the close proximity and the inability to sort of do it safely, given all the recommendations. I actually was not on the meeting last night, but I did read the minutes, and I believe it was unanimous as far as the other 4 members.
Okay.
No, she doesn't actually. She had something. Sorry, I was a little late joining in. I know the town of Westford has opened their courts.
Correct.
And I know that they have received a few phone calls about them, but all players are wearing masks, and they are continuing, and they're doing it as small groups.
So I
Now,
did,
is it being monitored or managed?
no. I reached out to the recreation department yesterday because a majority of the basketball courts are under their purview. And so their statement was that they have actually never closed them because they never had the ability to actually enforce or manage them. So they've kind of taken a blind eye to it because they had to focus their intention in other locations. So ultimately, yes, their board of their select board, there you go, Chuck. They also made a decision to be able to open the courts to put the information out, but I don't think it was something that the recreation department, they're doing what they're told. Doesn't mean that that's necessarily what they believe was the right thing to do.
I did see the governor's guidance that he did review yesterday was, continuing to leave the basketball courts closed.
And the, Jim, you can speak to it. I know it has it in this document, the Executive Order 43, but you talked about last night, there was another document as well. The decisions, ultimately, the guidance from the state are going to be up to each town and city on their own. So, that's why I think it's really important. We had the conversation with Board of Health last night. I'm happy to come to Board of Selectmen meeting and talk with you guys on that meeting. We want to have the public come in and do input on the meeting for Tuesday. So, it's good to be able to get the input, but I think at the end of the day, I know that and I said this last night, it's so hard. We want people to get out. We want people to be able to get back to their normal lives, but for the safety of everybody, just taking an extra month or two to be able to make sure that, we don't have the pandemic spike again. I think, we should be doing everything that we can to keep that under control.
I think that's everybody's wish. I mean, including folks that would in fact go and use any of the facilities. I mean, it's, when we go to the grocery store and we're all doing the 6 feet apart, the 2 carriage lengths, there's using the directional arrows in the aisles. And I think given direction, just like we do when we go to the grocery store, given guidance for any of our recreational facilities, I think we need to trust the public and allow them to make the right decision. But that's a decision that we'll have to make down the road.
So I don't know if folks had other questions for me or any other topics that we needed to discuss relative to any of either the recreation programs or facilities.
Lisa, on the same document that you have posted here, it talks about spectators.
Yeah.
And so particularly with your adult sports, there's a prohibition against spectators. And
Yes.
It took me a couple of times to reel it. Then it dawned on me, oh yes, the softball league's down over the hill from where I live. That's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So I assume that the organizers, when they submit their plans to you, they'll have kind of how they're going to address that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not just.
Sorry, Chuck.
I was gonna say that's not necessarily just for the adult softball leagues and things like that. There's a lot of like Legion baseball and different club baseball and things like that, where some of the players are already 18 or they just turned 18. Their parents are being banned from coming to the field. If the child is 17, the parent can come because they're a minor. So that's part of that. That, as I understand the interpretation, that's part of that as well.
So I moved down here to that space. And I mean, it's a little bit confusing. And again, this was another area that we talked about a little bit because they were saying like outdoor spaces. Sorry, this is indoor. Let me find the outdoor one. But essentially it was, I don't want to misquote it, so let me find it.
So I think it's up on the competition and tournament organizer. I think it's a little further up in the document.
social distancing.
I think it's,
Yeah, a lot of that is tournament. A lot of those baseball leagues, at least,
Yeah.
are tournament play. You're right. Yeah, softball and baseball. Yeah.
so it's in that section there, it talks about it. I think they further discuss it in the rest of it, so.
Yeah. So this one says outdoor competitions and tournaments, no more than 25 players on any surface or playing area, and no more than 100 people, including participants, players, coaches, volunteers, spectators, in the aggregate, in, on, or surrounding any surface area, start lines, provided that there is adequate space for all participants, players, coaches, volunteers, and spectators to maintain at least 6 feet social distancing. So it's again, like with these guidelines, I know that they have to be a little bit vague with stuff because every field is constructed in a completely different manner, and they need to be able to allow a little bit of flexibility for the individuals that are interpreting these guidelines. So I think, at this point in time, they're just saying that in general, they would prefer visitors or spectators to not be there. But if they are going to be there, this is the plan. People need to be able to have that 6-foot distance, and then no more than 100 people total within that area. And so one of the things that we talked about in MRPA is that per field. Is that per facility, because at Shaker Lane, we've got 3 fields out there. So I think the interpretation from MRPA is that it's like per facility. But if you think about it, let's say you've got 3 teams playing out at Shaker Lane, and there's 25 players, coaches, you've already got 75, So at that point in time, when you're including the actual teams and the support staff that are playing those games, you really don't have a lot of space for spectators left.
And there again, it's open to the interpretation of the individual community.
Yep.
So I guess back to the basketball core thing, and not to sound somewhat selfish in all of this, and maybe the chief, police chief can pipe in too. When complaints come in because people aren't wearing masks, how are we going to address that?
I'm not sure if he's still on. He had somebody come in his office.
Yeah.
But we'll do what we do to assist Park and Rec, like up at the lake and stuff like that, and have discussions with people and everything else.
Okay.
We're not going to get into citing people for trespass on the basketball courts or anything like that. So it's basically going to be an education thing, and
okay.
we'll do whatever is decided by you guys.
Just anticipating what we may get for calls. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know as far as like Westford, I know the PD have been called up on a few occasions to their courts, and as long as all the players were wearing masks and stuff like that, they've observed them for a few minutes and then they've moved on. I believe they had some signage in some locations, but not in all.
Yeah, similarly, I think they've been called for alumni in Whitcomb Field for people being out there on the track. So
yep. As long as they're wearing a mask and doing social distancing, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing.
Right.
No, I would agree 100%.
So here's the
Questions, comments, concerns?
Is there anything that you guys would like for me to bring back to, since I'm filling in for Joe, I don't want to drop the ball. Is there anything specifically that you'd like me to bring back to the Board of Selectmen?
I mean, being here for this discussion on basketball courts, that's good information. I'll definitely send this out so you can have a copy of it.
Claim on the table.
I don't know if you guys want to have some sort of joint meeting with the Park Commission to discuss. I know the agenda is already set. So I don't know if that's something that we can really amend or add in last minute. You know, we can try with the Park Commission. But that's up to you guys if you want to do that.
Yeah, so that does not become, we have up until 48 hours, and frankly, even with the open meeting law, we can change anything up until the meeting if it's deemed appropriate by the chair. So if you guys are able to get a quorum together, it would be through Zoom. We're going to meet in person, but it would be through Zoom because of the new standards. Now we can't have more than, I think, 8 people in room 103.
Yeah.
So you guys would have to be virtual, but it may be worthwhile just to have the conversation. And frankly, Kevin, and maybe you can bring that back to your board as well. I think the more dialogue we have around it, because we're all getting phone calls from different factions, if you will. So, and I've gotten a number of phone calls from folks saying open 300K, but I've also gotten a number of phone calls from people saying don't open 300K.
Yeah.
So, phone calls, emails, that kind of thing. So, we have to kind of weigh it all and hopefully make the best decision for to keep the residents as safe as possible, but also, trust in them that they are going to do the right thing. And to Chief Wazinski's point earlier, for the most part, people are demonstrating social distancing and they are taking the appropriate actions. So we have to trust that people are going to continue that kind of behavior and do so at 300K.
Honestly, one of the largest things that that I personally witnessed in town is the people that aren't wearing masks, the other people that are actually calling them out. So I mean, there is a kind of a self-policing going on out there. There are some that are adamantly against it, but for the most part, the people that are around are vocalizing the and bringing it to their attention. So it's kind of reassuring.
So one thing I did want to mention, there's been a lot of talk on social media as well. And so I know one individual specifically had said that they put in a request and were denied. That has not happened. I wanted to clarify that. I have never received a report from that individual. I would, like I said, we talked earlier about working with all the sports organizations, and that, I'm glad to review all that stuff with them. Baseball, put in some really great operation plans. We've already overviewed and looked at all that stuff. If that individual would like to move forward to do that, to have a youth program, I'd be still really happy to work with them. But I do want to be very clear that I have not received any phone call, email, or any plan on that specifically.
And I think it carries more water if it's if that plan is brought forward by Littleton Hoops, not by insert name here.
Agreed. Yeah, and the Park Commission actually asked for that. So when we had conversations the last time about the basketball courts, when we got into phase 2, that was the agreement that the Park Commission said, was that we're going to go ahead and open this for the youth sports to use the grass fields, but we'll also extend that to Littleton Hoops if they want to be able to have do the same thing at the courts. We'll figure out how to reserve that time and get them access. That was, we had clearly extended that offer. But like I said, I have not had any response to that offer through my email, through phone, through anything. No. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No? All right. That's all I have for the updates. I mean, like I said, it wasn't too much as far as changes go. So I think it would be beneficial if we did this again next Thursday, just to kind of visit the basketball courts and see what happens on Monday and Tuesday night. We can talk about that a little bit. So I will set up that agenda and get that set. And if anybody has any questions or anything that they'd like to see on that agenda, please send me an email and I'd be glad to do that. I think that's it. So I appreciate your time and, having a discussion on all of this. I know it's not easy and folks don't have a whole lot of time, so I really appreciate it. So, all right, I guess we're good.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.